Okay, everybody, brace yourself. I am fully aware that today's class had a lot of material. In fact, you're good, diligent students and you're doing your thing in your book and you hit page 63, The Worlds of Islam, Fragmented and Expanding. And then you say, holy shnikes, there's a lot of stuff here. Well, if you thought that, you're right because there's a lot of stuff in that. However, you are all taking this class to prepare yourself for college, and I can tell you firsthand as somebody who's been to college for a long time, if you can hang with these pages, you can hang with college. I really do feel that now. The more astute amongst you realized, hey, didn't we just learn about Islam a couple days ago? And I responded, you sure did. So previously on, I asked the class, what do you remember from the class a couple days ago? And I was hoping that people remembered the Arabian Peninsula before Muhammad, very different groups with different identities. Most of them were settled. Nomads were a minority. But again, pretty fractured into these smaller groups. And then with the rise of Islam, it gets put under one umbrella. And hopefully you remember Mecca as the most important city to Muslims and how they face it when they pray and take a Hajj and circle the Kaaba, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. I hope that people remembered about the life of Muhammad, when he was born, how he was orphaned, got involved with business, received religious revelation in 610, and his message was there is one God, Allah, that you submit to him. If you do, you go to paradise. If you do not, you go to hell. And that Muhammad's revelations were the final revelations that went all the way back to Abraham, the Abrahamic religion. So we took a few minutes to see what we remember from the other day. And most of you remembered quite a bit, which I appreciate and was proud of you for remembering. Okay. However, this U word, people tend to struggle with. So the Umma. Now the Umma means the believers. So the point of this is the Umma became the identity of these people in these regions, and they were able to unify under this notion of belief. Okay. So all my prior identities are secondary to my primary identity as a believer. Okay. And this notion of Umma was very successful geographically. You can see under Muhammad, a tremendous amount of land became Muslim. And then just a few decades later, all this light green. And then, look at this. Within the span of 130 years, this is a big chunk of the world this religion spread very, very rapidly. Okay. Now, this man, Abu Bakr, was instrumental in this spread. Now, after Muhammad's death, he took over as the successor, and he had 2 big tasks. He had to standardize the Islamic religion and consolidate the Islamic State, and he was very successful in doing so. And he reestablished Muslim authority over the Arabs and oversaw the compilation of the Quran. Now, some of my Christian students found a parallel between him and St. Paul, where after the death of Jesus, St. Paul's letters converted many people. Many of his letters are in the New Testament, his books in the New Testament. So after Jesus' death, St. Paul spread religion, and after Muhammad's death, Abu Bakr spread Islam. Now, when people get together, they tend to disagree. So this religion is like Noah. It's like the rest of the religions where some disagreements broke out and some factions emerged. Now, the disagreements were political and in terms of succession and very detailed, more detailed than I think is required for our purposes. But what happened is within this very large and quick spread, we had these divisions of rival sects. Okay. And to this day, these sects still are seen. Shiites, Sunnis, Kharijites, and Sufis as well. So like all of the world religions, sects develop, and Islam is no different. Again, the details of this we will get into in particular when we learn about the gunpowder empires, which you'll learn about. I'll teach you a little later on. Now, this place here, which I've gotten to see with my own eyes, is the Dome of the Rock, and it's the first important Islamic shrine to be built. Okay? And Muslims believe that Muhammad began his night journey, his ascension into heaven from here. And it's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful building, but it's incredibly important and incredibly holy to Muslims. And in Jerusalem, the city, which I consider the most important city in the world because it houses these Abrahamic religions in quarters. There's a Muslim quarter, a Jewish quarter, Christian quarter, and an Armenian quarter. And the Abrahamic religions reside. And you cross the street, you're going from synagogue to mosque. You cross the street the other way, you're going from mosque to church. And a city that I would wish all of you to see before you die. It is worth the trip. It is worth the money, believe me. So anyway, the rise and the fall of the caliphate. Now, this is getting closer to what we're going to be tested on. So in the early days, the Islamic conquest, this is the main area that they took over, okay? And they continued. They expanded. They became militarily more proficient. They set up garrisons, and it spread and it spread and it spread. And the Umayyad and the Abbasid caliphates, we see further growth. Now, the reason I'm zipping through this is because you're not going to be tested on this come springtime, but understand that these caliphates, these groupings, emerged, and it's growth and growth and growth. And in terms of this growth, it is governmental, it is cultural, it is across the board, okay? Now, upon the fall of the Umayyads, the family of Abbas, okay, take over the Abbasid Caliphate. Now, the Abbasids held it till 1258. That's a long time. Now, what happened is you had this combination of church and state that still persists in a lot of the Islamic world today, okay? And you see from this growth, architecture is a sign, obviously a beautiful mosque, and you can see the progress and their proficiency, the rise of literature. We see Baghdad becoming a really important city, which is the capital of Iraq today. We see the conversion of non-Muslims. It spreads and it spreads and it spreads. And again, political fragmentation, just like religious fragmentation, eventually break these up, okay? Now, the underlying political diversity of fragmented Muslim world was a strong sense of religious identity by the scholars, okay, the ulama. Okay, so the ulama were the teachers of people that helped continue. So those two words, umma and ulama, are confused, but again, the umma, believer, ulama, teachers, they reinforce Muslim identity and they reinforce spread. Okay, now this is the part that you're probably going to see on the test, okay? So eventually we see a group of people called the Seljuk Turks. And as the Abbasids were fading out, they rise, okay? Empires rise, empires fall. And they take a big chunk of that land. And you can see it, the Middle East. To this day, this area of land is still primarily Islamic, okay? So you look at the Turks here, and they they saw the deterioration of the Tigris-Euphrates irrigation system. There was insufficient revenue, insufficient food resources, and it led to the collapse of Baghdad. And Baghdad, I'll tell you what, it's part of Mesopotamia, the first civilization in human history. It has had its rises and its falls, and we'll get into this. So eventually the Mongols show up. Okay, when the Mongols show up, pretty much wherever they went, they conquered. And when the Mongols arrived, that ended the Abbasid Caliphate right in its tracks, okay? And again, the Mongols got the story or stories for another day, okay? And then we see the rise of the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire lasted from 1299 to 1923. This brought long-term stability to the region. And again, too many details to do justice today, okay? Now, that was about as quick as I could make it, and a strong suggestion, and I'm thankful for this man, Steve Heimler, who I'm relying on heavily. I think he's an excellent teacher. He gave a video that is worth watching, okay? He really breaks it down. Now, to end this, okay, here's my attempt at giving you a drink with a garden hose. Islam spread quickly. It spread really quickly. As it grew, into different geographies and different interpretations, there were divisions in terms of religious sects, how they interpreted successors and how they perceived the religion, what it ought to be. Also, we see the rise of empires related to this, with the with the Abbasids and the Seljuks and the Ottoman. So you're seeing this blending of religion and government and the rises and the falls. And it's a very complicated story, okay? And as you read in your book, it's a very complicated story. But if you get these basics, we will go into more detail as the year goes on. And again, strong suggestion, everybody. Check this video out. It's on Google Classroom. Hopefully it brings some clarity to what I consider a very, very challenging section that we went over. So anyway, tomorrow will be easier, I promise. Thanks for hanging in there, and I appreciate you watching.